was just traded to Green Bay on August 26th for a 7th-round pick. He starts the Packers home opener today. Let's make our picks. Rex, Colts, and Packers, who you got?
Well, unfortunately, I've seen this Malik Willis play in the NFL, and no way in hell am I taking him. I'm going to take the Colts.
Okay.
One last prayer. Richardson will go as far as his arm can take him. It is tipped up there and intercepted. Intercepted by Evan Williams to finish this game.
The challenges of going into a football game without your quarterback, with a guy that's been here for 3 weeks, it's a credit to everybody. It's a credit to, again, to our players and our coaching staff for putting them in a good position.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
It's a little bit from Matt LaFleur postgame yesterday. I don't know about all of you. I enjoyed week 2 so much more than week 1. And maybe it's because the Packers played on Friday night, and I had nothing against the Brazil game. I had nothing against them playing on a Friday night. I had nothing against that game in and of itself. But the way that the Packer game fit into the rest of week 1, it felt like the Packers were in their own little universe, and it didn't really fit into anything else. So yesterday, sitting down watching noon game to Sunday Night Football. And also I was home alone, so I had nothing other to do than to sit in a recliner and watch. Like, it just worked out yesterday. But I like week 2 a lot because it really, I mean, it doubles your sample size, right? I don't think there's a bigger jump. Matt LaFleur talked about it last week. Like, teams typically make their biggest jump from week 1 to week 2. I also think fans, viewers of football, take a huge jump from week 1 to week 2 because week 1, we're just getting back into it. You know, like the Patriots went into Cincinnati and beat them last week. And Cincinnati, you know, played Kansas City down to the wire yesterday. Easily could have won that game. Like, week 1 really isn't indicative or instructive of anything. But at the conclusion of week 1, that's all we have. We have one game of sample from every single team. And to double that sample size and to really start to feel like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand where each team fits. You know, the story's far from written. We're only 2 weeks in, but to go from 1 games to 2, that's quite literally doubling our exposure and our sample of each one of these teams and each one of these quarterbacks and coaches. It just feels like we get so much good data to help put the season into perspective so far. So I loved the slate yesterday. There were some really surprising games. There's some teams that are 2-0 and looking really good. There's some quarterbacks like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, some of the best quarterbacks through 2 weeks. That's interesting. That's fun. And then there's some teams like the Rams and the Ravens that are 0-2. And I still think the Rams are good, and I still think the Ravens are good. But if you're dealing with injuries and you're 0-2, like, that's why football's great, is you can't just lose games and kind of discard them as, well, you know, it's early. Well, you can do that in the NBA. You can do that in baseball. You can't really do that in football, which is part of why we love the NFL, but also why it's brutal. You lose a couple offensive linemen and you lose a coin flip game in week 1. You get blown out in week 2. It's like, well, we're 0-2 and the team's in shambles, like the Rams. What a Rams fan feel today. So I love week 2. Certainly doesn't hurt that our Packers won yesterday and went to 1-1. 1-1 certainly feels a lot better than 0-2. So that's what we're discussing tonight. This is the Wisco Sports Show. Would love to take your calls. I like Mondays during the football season because people are fired up and they have thoughts on what they just watched. The Packer game we just watched. If you have thoughts on the Badger game, I'll take them. We can discuss. I don't know that we learned anything new about the Badgers. I think Saturday was a continuation of what we saw in week 1 versus Western Michigan, a continuation of what we saw in week 2 versus South Dakota. It was just against a much better opponent. So if you have earth-shattering Badger analysis and takes, more than happy to take your call on that as well. But I think most people probably want to talk Packers today. 608-321-1670. Would love to take as many calls and texts as possible. Probably take our first break here a little bit early just so we can start getting to calls, because it can turn into a little bit of a logjam on these football Mondays, these green and gold Mondays, as we say, if I ramble and I talk. I'll tell you my piece. I'll give you my takes, and then I want to hear from you. Again, 608-321-1670. Just be ready with that number. You can tweet me at Wisco Grant. You can comment on the live stream, the Wisco Sports Show on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Lots of ways to watch and to pay attention and to chime in. So if you want to join the show, I would love you to tonight, these Monday shows especially. Remember the last time the Brewers played the Cubs and played gross baseball? Like, it was not good baseball. The offense sucked. It was a bad series. It was objectively a series of bad baseball by both teams. But if I remember correctly, the Brewers won 2 of 3, or they might have even swept him, but they at least won 2 of 3. And the last game of the series was a day game. So we instantly went on the air. We're reacting to it, right? It was a Wednesday or a Thursday, I think. And I talked about how sports aren't just black and white. For some people, they might be. Maybe you're a person who's like, if they win, I'm happy. If they lose, I'm mad, and there's no other outcome. But I think for a lot of sports fans, especially if you're listening to Sports Talk Radio daily, right? Games can be exhausting. Sometimes you watch a game, you're like, oh God, I'm just glad it's done. Even if my team won, I'm just glad it's done. Or maybe my team lost, but I'm so tired, I'm so exhausted by the product, by the performance I just watched. I'm just glad it's over. Sports can be exhausting. They can be depressing. They can be inspiring, right? I'm not often inspired by sports, but man, like watching Giannis put up 50 and make all his free throws, like how can you not be inspired by that? On top of the joy and the happiness that you get from the win, like there's something else there, right? Sports can also be funny. Like I thought that Brewers series win over the Cubs a couple weeks back. I'm like, this is just, come on, guys, this is fun. Like this is hilarious. This is really good content on top of some wins that we can celebrate. As that game yesterday wrapped up, and I watched Malik Willis on the field with Pam Oliver, and then I watched Matt LaFleur's postgame presser, and I watched Malik Willis's postgame presser kind of on my phone when Chiefs and Bengals were on, and I guess I had Cardinals Rams on too. I just came away from that game. Yeah, the running game was great. And Jeff Hafley, good schematic things, good X's and O's things, but way more so than any specific football things or coaching things or scheme things that took place. I was just struck by what an awesome story it was. What a great story. Sometimes a game can just be a great story, right? It doesn't always have to be about the scheme and the X's and O's. And here's my story with film clips. And like that stuff is great. And it's really additive to the sports experience. How great is it that we have writers and bloggers and podcasters who are committed to every little part and parcel of every single game? That's great. But sometimes it's okay to walk away from a game and think, wow, just on a human interest level, on an enjoyment level, it's just a really good story. Right? Malik Willis yesterday, one of the best stories of the week, maybe the best story of week 2, maybe one of the better stories of the season so far. A guy who many kind of counted out. And you heard Rex Ryan in the intro saying, I'm not picking the Packers. Malik Willis, I've seen him play. He's terrible. Right? What a cool story. To put it into perspective, right? Malik Willis was drafted out of Liberty at the end of the Mike Vrabel era. Right? It was the last year of that GM, and I think the second last year of Mike Vrabel. I think the GM was out a year before Mike Vrabel, but I'm not 100% sure. In any event, he came in at the tail end of a regime. And you'll often see NFL front offices do this, where it's like, well, it's not looking good. If we don't put up this year, we're probably out of a job. Let's just take a quarterback to say that we did. Right? Kellen Mond in Minnesota at the end of Zimmer Spielman is a great example. It's like, they never believed in Kellen Mond, but they thought, well, if we don't take a quarterback, we're not giving ourselves any avenue or any option to potentially keep our jobs, right? It's often a last-ditch effort by a general manager, head coach pairing that knows they're probably trending towards the door if this doesn't start working. They don't know how much longer they'll be around. So we'll take a quarterback just to say that we did. And those quarterbacks are often taken in, I think the case of Kellen Mond was the second round. Malik Willis was the third round. So it's not like quarterbacks they're in love with. We don't love these guys so much to take them in the first round. We don't really believe in them, but we'll just take one to say that we took one. Right? So that's the environment that Malik Willis comes into as a pro, as a developmental project. He was not a polished player. He was a toolsy prospect, project type guy, right? And not only did he come into an organization that was in flux, but it's an organization, that was ground and pound, defense, Mike Vrabel. Like that was not a good situation any way that you slice it up. The roster was not conducive. The coaching was not conducive. The organization and the regime in charge of the organization was not in a good place and time to receive and to be patient with a quarterback to get an honest to goodness chance. And that's not to say that Malik Willis was awesome in Tennessee and got the short end of the stick. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he came into a situation that probably couldn't be much worse for a developmental player that was going to need time, that was going to need reps, that was going to need coaching. And at the 11th hour, as he's about to get cut probably by said organization, Green Bay swoops in, acquires him for a 7th round pick. And he is now tied with an organization as a backup where he can take reps and he can develop, but he can also work with a coach like Matt LaFleur instead of Mike Vrabel, who's all offense and all scheme and is really probably going to do a much better job catering to a quarterback and bringing a quarterback along. And we saw that last year with Jordan Love. I'm not just saying that, well, he coaches offense, so he's better with quarterbacks. I think a lot of times that's true. Maybe not always, but we saw it be true last year. He brought along Jordan Love. If I'm Malik Willis, I'd way rather be there than in Tennessee. And I know they trended offense with this coaching hire, but again, new regime. He wasn't their guy. He was the previous regime, right before Rand Carthon, and I think it's Brian Callahan now. Something Callahan. I think it's Brian Callahan. I think he comes into the Packers, much better situation, much more stable offensive coaching staff, stable offensive line, which is the opposite of what the Titans have. Deep offensive skill position group, again, the opposite of what the Titans have. And the team rallies around him after he's here for 3 weeks, and he's able to lead the team to a gotta-have-it win in their home opener. That's a cool story. And I'm really happy for the guy. This is his 60-second little interview on the field with Pam Oliver after the game. And I was watching this. I'm like, this is a cool story. Like, put the notes down. Stop worrying about the completion percentage and the box, the alignments and the snap counts. Just the human interest story of Malik Willis showing up in Green Bay and winning this game is really cool.
Malik, after really being in a whirlwind there, getting ready for this game, what's it feel like now to help propel this team to victory?
I mean, it feels awesome. I just got to give all the glory to God for giving me this opportunity and just putting me in an environment where they could just help me, not only get ready for the game, but just instill confidence in me and help me be the best that I can be.
Discuss the game plan a little bit now that things are over with that game. What did you like and what did Matt install that helped you succeed?
I mean, he was just trying to do everything he could to help me along the way, as well as instill the confidence that he know that I can do whatever he needs me to do. He doesn't have to change his offense, but he can add some stuff to help us execute and go out there and just play ball.
Are you proud?
I don't get proud. I just try to, take it. We got a lot to work on, obviously, and we just got to continue to get better and work hard, and we'll see what Jordan's at and continue to just prepare for this thing along the way.
Nice work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's a really cool story. You listen to that interview, it's like, man, this guy, I think he has a good perspective of the situation that he's in, the situation that he came from, and the importance of what him and his new team just accomplished. This is really cool. It's a cool story. And we'll get into, what it means as the Packers now are on to Tennessee, and we're still thinking and wondering when Jordan Love is going to be available and healthy again, and the wide receivers, the offensive line, the diva, all of that, yes. But just to begin tonight's show, I just wanted to highlight, I think that's a really cool story. And if we can't, as sports fans, stop to smell the roses of a good story every once in a while, if we can't put down the film breakdown and if we can't put down the snap counts and all the other things that we get caught up in to just appreciate a human being who celebrated a great accomplishment in a big moment on a big stage, like if we can't celebrate that, then what are we doing here? So I just wanted to begin the show with that. There's one caller on hold. We're going to take that call, and then we'll take a break. I have some thoughts on Matt LaFleur. We'll hear a little bit more from certain players and coaches. We'll talk about the snap counts and the scheme and all that stuff, but I just wanted to begin here today. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant Bills.
Thomas!
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How's
Right away.
lacrosse? Yeah.
Lacrosse is good. I'm impressed. I was the first one on the gun.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
thought
you were quick
maybe
with the
we
trigger.
could
I know
get
we
Clement
couldn't.
Mike.
Yeah, we couldn't get you in on Bill's show earlier today. We're a little guest heavy, but that's fine. What'd you think of the game yesterday?
You know what, Grant? We're big chilling. He's a busy guy, but
Sure.
yes, some things that I took away from the game, from the post game press conferences from both LaFleur and Willis. I'm just going to start by echoing just off what you said, Grant. Willis, a really down to earth person, really humbled. He said even during his post game, all glory to God. God's good, man. That is really true. And our rushing attack was just really, really proficient too. What did we finish with? Like 261 yards rushing on.
Well, they had Pert near 250 in the first half, which was,
Yeah.
I thought they'd run the ball, and I thought they'd probably do it at a pretty good clip based on what Indy allowed last week against Houston. But no one thought they were rushing for 250 yards in the first half. That's only been done a couple
Right.
of times this century.
Right. And you know what? I got to give a shout out, and I know LaFleur did after the game too. The big guys up front really helped Malik Willis feel comfortable there from the get-go. The guys up front were very disciplined on the defensive side, that is, and we forced some bad mistakes from Anthony Richardson, which led us to good field position and then good points from that too.
Yeah, they were able
LaFleur
to steal.
Go
Go ahead. Say what you're going to say about LaFleur.
Oh my! You're being way too Midwest nice to me. I was just going to say I'm proud. Matt LaFleur, that is, said he was proud of Malik Willis, his preparation. And you know what? I really loved Grant Bills. I love that LaFleur gave the game ball to Malik Willis. I mean, that's very well deserved. He's only been here for like 3 weeks, and he's done a fine job. No matter how long Jordan Love is out, whether maybe the next 2-3 games, my confidence has now been upgraded like substantially after seeing this performance from Malik Willis. So also want to give a shout out to the UW Eagles football team as they got a big 35-21 win over Northern Michigan University.
Damn straight.
And Eagles are looking good. Travel up to Grand Valley State up in Allendale, Michigan. That'll be a tougher test because they won their first game last Thursday, 58-0. I think it might be a little closer game, which was the story for our Northern Michigan University game, but still.
I mean,
Eagles
those are Division II schools, and we might get into it this week, Thomas. I appreciate it. Yeah, the Northern game was impressive. They're a D2 school. I just think it's worthwhile if anyone's into the WEAC and if anyone's into Whitewater, Oshkosh, UW La Crosse. It's just cool that a lot of D3 programs are that good and that can kind of stick it to a D2 program like Northern. And Northern's a cool place. The dome that they have up there, and college football, even at the Division III and Division II level, is interesting. Probably more interesting than the Badger game on Saturday, which I was in attendance for. The crowd was great at the beginning, and that was kind of that. We'll take one more call, then we'll take our break. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant.
Hey, Cone.
I'll call balls and strikes. Great call by Thomas to open the show.
Yeah. He snuck a little WEAC talking at the end. It was smart of him to hold on to that until the end. That was good caller mechanics.
Agreed. And I just want to give a shout out to LaCroix Butler. He got married this weekend. Beautiful wedding, beautiful bride. Wishing them a lifelong, love and happiness and partnership.
We love that for LaCroix Butler. What a great weekend. Packers get a win. I mean, the Badgers, whatever, we can ignore that. But LaCroix Butler getting married. Let's everyone tweet at LaCroix Butler. Congratulations. I'll lead the charge. I will go tweet at him right now.
And yeah, the best thing about that wedding was it took place during the Badger-Alabama game, so really didn't have to watch a second of it. And, it seems like I didn't miss much. Thought Tyler Van Dyke is out for the year. Whatever. No identity on this team. Worst running backs we've had in the last 25 years. Luke Fickell, I don't want to freak out. I don't want to call him on the hot seat, but, just talk about ripping tradition from the university. Our offensive line is weak and our running backs are mid, and that's just not Wisconsin football.
That fourth down in the first quarter, I think it was still in the first quarter. They ate a lot of time off in the first quarter, but just 4th and 1 and you're running out of the gun. It's like, what kind of happened here? I didn't need them to go, 3 yards in a cloud of dust every single play. I know that there was going to be some advancement with Fickell and Longo and probably a change in identity a little bit, but my God, you still got to be able to get a yard. I know it's Alabama, but to do it from the gun too is I just hated that. It just felt wrong to see that in a game where a Big Ten opponent is hosting an SEC opponent and we're running 4th and short out of the gun. It just kind of made me sick a little bit.
Yeah, if Joe Buck was on the call, he would call that a disgusting act. That's really what it was. The lifelong fans of the Badgers.
It really was. I appreciate it, Cone. I got to run. Shout out to LaCroix Butler again. I'm going to tweet at him during this break. You can tweet at me and join the show at Wisco Grant. If you have thoughts on the Badgers, we could do that. Throw them in. I left the game at halftime for reasons I will explain coming up after this break, but we'll continue to talk Packers. I have thoughts on Matt LaFleur. And we got to talk about the performance of Jeff Hafley in that defense. Bill said last week, defense has got to hold him to 17 or less. And that turned out to be the exact number, because if the Colts would have came back and put up 17 points on the board, they would have beat the Packers by 1. So Bill was correct. We'll talk about the defense. Matt LaFleur, his role in this, and probably hear a little bit from certain coaches and players over the next hour and a half as well. And your call, 608-321-1670.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I like Malik Willis. He's a good human being. But always has a smile on his face when you see him in the locker room. Guy doesn't really know ball.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
And I think if you're the Colts defense, you're stacking the box, you're bringing the safeties in, you're playing one-on-one on the outside, and that's how you're going to beat the Packers situation. And then on offense, you just run the ball, run the clock, make it a dirty game. The thing about Malik is when it comes to checks, cans, anything oppo, he has a tough time seeing safeties. He has a tough time seeing where blitzes are coming from. And Matt LaFleur running a very similar offense to what Arthur Smith ran in Tennessee. I don't see LaFleur making such a dramatic change where it's like, hey, we're doing day one installs for this guy. So I think it's an ugly pick. Hopefully you have the grace of everyone going against you, and that's why you win.
That's kind of what it is.
Yeah, but I think the Colts handle business.
That's Taylor Lewan, Big Cat, and a couple other Barstool personalities. I don't know which particular show that was. I just know that Packers Twitter, Packers fandom kind of picked up on that clip. Pretty strong words, right? When you say, I like Malik Willis, he's a good dude, but he doesn't really know ball. Which is kind of funny because I think yesterday's game, and look, I'm not the world's biggest Malik Willis defender. It's not like I was banging the table for him last week. I just play some of these clips to kind of highlight what a good story this is. It's like a lot of people thought this guy was no good at all. And we had plenty of data to support that he's not very good at all. Right. But Taylor Lewan specifically there, a former Titan player. And I guess maybe their time overlapped in Tennessee. Maybe not. He's speaking about him like their time overlapped. So I don't know the entire timeline of Taylor Lewan's career. I'm just assuming at some point they overlapped based on the way that he's commenting on that, because he speaks like he's talking from a position of experience. They say, well, he doesn't know ball. It's just a little ironic. It's a little funny because I think yesterday's performance by Malik Willis proved that he does know ball. Maybe he doesn't have all the skills to make all the throws, but the way that he came in and in a 3-week period, learned all the play calls, learned all the checks, and was comfortable getting the team in and out of the huddle with the correct information, getting position. And there was a lot of double, triple option in the backfield with movements and counters. Like, if there was a type of performance, a limited performance from a backup quarterback that shows cerebrally they got it, they know what's going on and they're coachable and they can absorb information, that was it. So a little funny, Taylor Lewan's criticism is, well, he doesn't know ball. It's like, well, maybe the correct criticism should have been, well, he's not very accurate. You don't really trust his arm. He's got all the gifts in the world, but never really been able to harness it. Okay, that's true. Totally, fine. But to say he doesn't know ball is a little funny because then he goes out and and he operates things so cleanly. He operated with 3 weeks of experience in this system with this coaching staff and this team. He operated that offense so much more cleanly, so much more efficiently, and with so fewer mistakes than, for example, Caleb Williams and the Bears last night. They couldn't get lined up. There were procedural penalties. There were false starts. Now, Caleb's a rookie. Sure, I guess Malik Willis has been using the 2022 draft. So is this his second or third year? I'm just trying to do math off the dome. I mean, it's either his second, possibly his third year. He's got a little bit more experience, but he also got here 3 weeks ago. And if you think that narrative, that idea is being over-discussed and overplayed, I think football fans, myself included, underestimate how difficult it is for players coming out of college, especially with Hugh Freeze and at Liberty. Like, that's not a pro-style offense. Right? That's a college offense through and through, where things are abbreviated and things are limited, and you're running the clap snap back there, right? Drake May, for example, in New England, it's a great example. Drake May has all of the gifts and has really performed, I think, in moments that I've seen and in stretches that I've seen, better than Jacoby Brissett. In fact, I think Gerard Mayo at one point during camp said, well, Drake's outperformed Jacoby Brissett, but there are all sorts of factors. Drake May has to come in and learn how to communicate an NFL offense. It's a different language than what some of these guys are running in college. That's Malik Willis's background, then goes to Tennessee, right? And is trying to learn and trying to grow and process and be familiar with that language and familiar with that lingo. It's like a language, right? And then to come to Green Bay and only have 3 weeks to get all those checks, all those calls, forget making the throws. Well, they didn't ask him to do all that much. Well, yeah, they didn't ask him to make a ton of throws, but to ask someone who wasn't at camp, wasn't at OTAs, wasn't there during the preseason, to come in and say, hey, we need you to get all the play calls in. We need you to make sure everybody's lined up. We need you to be in charge of watching for protections and this, that, and the other thing. That's just so impressive. I think it's more impressive than any physical thing that he did yesterday. And it's a great story. It's a really good story, especially listening to some of the commentary yesterday, which was valid and warranted, about how Malik Willis starting a football game spells disaster for Green Bay. It had to be a really satisfying moment for him. And in that interview that he did with Pam Oliver at the end of the game, I'm just like, wow, I want to root for this guy. Not just because he plays on my team. I was rooting for him all day because he was on my team. He's a quarterback on my team. But now that I listen to him talk about the experience and what they accomplished today, just really happy for him, really easy to cheer for him. J.A. Krebs, some texts, 608-321-1670. Says, Matt was a professional head coach yesterday, made a game plan, didn't divert from it, and had Malik ready. Yeah, a ton of credit to Matt LaFleur. And we talked about this a little bit last week. To a certain degree, this was expected. Right? I don't know that I expected Matt LaFleur to coach the offense to almost 250 rushing yards in the first half. But I expected this unit to come out and look competent on some level. Again, not light up the scoreboard, not score 30-plus points, but there was an expectation. I talked about this. We took lots of calls, lots of texts about how Matt LaFleur is under the gun to perform and to have this team in a place to compete and to possibly win a game or two without Jordan Love, depending on how long he's out. It's not like this was a shock. This was expected, right? I've seen Matt LaFleur do this before. He did it on short weeks without Devontae Adams. He's done it on short weeks with guys missing. Like, we've seen Matt LaFleur a couple times in his career now under the gun come up with an awesome game plan. Think of Arizona on Thursday Night Football a couple of years ago. One of my favorite Packers games in recent memory, the one that was capped off by that Rasul Douglas interception in the end zone. We've seen Matt LaFleur coach up games in tough circumstances before. But, man, losing your quarterback, that's a whole nother thing. But he's got all the wide receivers. He's got the tight ends. I think their offensive line is good, might be very good by the end of the year. I don't think it's great. But obviously Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd showing a little bit of get up and go yesterday. They have the pieces on offense to be viable at the very least. And yesterday, the way their defense performed, viable was good enough. I think based on what we've seen from Will Levis so far, viable will have them in the game next week. Tennessee's defensive front is nasty. They're physical. I think they're going to provide and present all sorts of challenges that Indianapolis didn't. But I also think Will Levis is a little bit of a train wreck. So I don't think the Packers will need to score 30 points to win. If they can hit 20, if they can get to 21, I think they have a great chance of winning next week. And I think with Malik Willis under center, that's just about as much as we can ask for. Bobby in Menominee says Badgers looked closer to a WEAC team than an SEC team. Bama was bigger, faster, stronger at every position. Are Badgers allowed to play corners over 5'9", 180? I guess I have nothing to add to that. That's apt commentary, Bobby. Thank you. Grandman Mike Says, first of all, Rex Ryan is an asshat. Players can play differently with another team. I agree. We never know how it can pan out. Brady without Belichick is maybe different than GOAT status. Willis ran that Packers offense perfectly to get a W. Anyone that thinks differently must watch Rex Ryan's shows religiously and know absolutely nothing about sports. Wow, Grain Man is coming hard. Love can take his time and come back to 100%. We don't need him until the Cardinals. In Willis, we trust. Go Pack, go. T-3 to the playoffs for the Crew. Badgers are a fickle matter this year, but so is college football. I only watch paid athletes on Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and some Fridays and Saturdays. Wait, NFL is taking over my weeks. Love the show. Keep it up. Yeah. Again, not much to add. I think you covered all the bases there. On the idea that now Jordan Love can rest and relax, I hammered this last week. I will hammer this anytime these conversations come up on the show. When Love is healthy, play him. Not early. Don't sit him extra because you feel comfortable with your backup quarterback. Sit him until he is healthy and medically cleared, and then when he's cleared, bring him back. Yesterday does not change my approach. Yesterday does not change my point of view on how much time Jordan Love can miss. Well, you bought him a couple extra weeks. No. When he's healthy, play him. And if he's not healthy, then Malik Willis will play. That's how this works. I think I talked about this either last Friday or Thursday. As soon as you take that approach, sports fans, you're going to have so much stress. Lift it off of you. You're going to feel it. We went through this with Giannis when the Bucks were in a series against the Pacers in the first round last year. It's like, well, if they win game 2, then Giannis could maybe come. No. Giannis will come back when he's ready to come back. Jordan Love will come back when he's ready to come back. We don't need to change plans. We don't need to change his injury timeline because of something Malik Willis did or didn't do yesterday. It's a little bit of a pet peeve. I don't like it. A little bit of a pet peeve. Sorry to take it out on you, Grain Man, but I've heard it a dozen times today, so I'm just using your text as a reason to bring that up. Paul and Menashe, last text, and then we'll take a break. One thing we have plenty of evidence is that most people will cut bait and throw something in the trash at the first sign of failure. See both Willis, pre-Packers, and now it's at Frickle's doorstep. It's mostly ridiculous. That makes such little sense the way you wrote it. I'm feeling the spirit of your message. I agree. And I pointed that out in the first segment, Paul. Like, Malik Willis could not have come into a much worse scenario, right? He was drafted as kind of a throwaway pick, as a last-ditch effort by a regime that was failing. That was their general manager's last draft at the time, and Mike Vrabel would be there for another year, but that's it. So he's caught in between regimes, and it's not like Tennessee is some haven of offensive ingenuity and talent. It's a ground-and-pound team. So it was a combination of awful factors. Now, if Malik Willis was Patrick Mahomes, he would have figured it out. He's not Patrick Mahomes, which is why he was traded for a 7th-round pick and playing as a backup in Green Bay. But his situation in Tennessee could not have been much worse, and he's now added to a team in a position where I think he's in a really good spot to succeed. He already won 1 game as a backup. If Jordan Love misses 3 games, including yesterday, he will have done his job. Now, I would love to get greedy and try to steal a win in Tennessee on Sunday. But I said, look, if Jordan Love wins 3 games, I would lock in. If I could guarantee 1 win and no better, I would take it, because that means Jordan Love comes back at 2-2 or 1-3, and that's possible. You can't do 1-4, can't do 1-5, but 0-3 and 0-4 are death sentences. Just getting 1 game. If he misses 3 games, just getting that 1 win, he will have done his job. I want to get greedy, but I cannot overstate how important that win was yesterday. 608-321-1670. We'll get to your calls on the Packers. I want to talk a little bit more about Matt LaFleur. And at some point, we got to discuss the game that Jeff Hafley's defense played yesterday. Yeah, they gave up a lot of yards on the ground. Not really sure what to make about that, but the results, unlike the results against Philly, 400 yards, 30 points, much, much better yesterday. And that feels like a step in the right direction. We'll continue this, and I'll take your calls next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. Wisco Sports Show. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Our guys up front, they want to get those sacks, but I can't tell you how proud I am of just being disciplined up front with our rush. I know there was a couple plays he got out late, but I thought for the most part, they did a really good job up front of just being disciplined, trying to collapse the pocket in front of him and force him to make some bad decisions.
It's Matt LaFleur talking about the approach of his defense, specifically up front, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, and Igbare, Kenny Clark. Probably a little bit of a bummer of a start to the year for those guys against Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson yesterday, because I don't know that they've had a lot of opportunities to go get after sacks and to just rush the pass rusher. which I think is probably the right approach, right? You don't want to over pursue. You don't want to over rush those guys because then they break contain and they run for 30 yards and they completely and totally, can split the game wide open and can kind of bust a defense wide open like that. So Matt LaFleur, that was after the game yesterday, kind of describing the process and the method behind the madness up front, because Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith have been quiet, and Kenny Clark, at least in a pass rushing capacity, has been quiet. I think Kenny Clark and others ate a lot of double teams yesterday. Now, Jonathan Taylor had a big day, which is something that we'll discuss. I'm not really sure what to do with that, but it was interesting to hear Matt LaFleur talk about something that we suspected and discussed last week and expected would kind of be the same through this game as well, which is we're not really too concerned with rushing the passer. We want to apply pressure. We want to apply discomfort without going for broke to get sacks and to get the quarterback on the ground, because that's how contain is broken. And then that's how, Anthony Richardson has how many rushing yards? Oh my God, he's completely, busted this game wide open. And Jalen Hurts, obviously with the Eagles, capable of that as well. So I thought that was interesting. That was Matt LaFleur yesterday. 608-321-1670. If you would like to call or text the show, would love to take your calls on what we saw the Packers going to 1-1 yesterday. And if you have a thought on the Badgers, sure. It was announced. Colton Bartholomew breaking the news, by the way. I see graphics and outlets saying that it was Pete Thamel. It was not, or Pete Thamel. I thought Thamel just because, Nicholas Flamel. But it was Colton Bartholomew, the State Journal. So friend of show, Tim, my cap to Colton. It's what was expected. It's what we all thought was going to happen. So I know we were all so excited about where this Badgers season was trending. Sorry to burst your bubble. We're going to get more Braden Locke. Thrilling. So if you have thoughts on that, I'll take your calls. Not really sure what to do with the Packers' defensive performance yesterday. I'm just going to go thought by thought, element by element, and it might be a little random, might be bouncing around a little bit. It's not going to be this beautiful weaving analysis because I'm not really sure what I'm analyzing. I'm not even really sure how I feel about the Packers' defense. They only gave up 10 points, which gave Malik Willis and the Packers' offense more than enough breathing room. Now, I don't know that the point total totally tells the story of how well a defense plays. I think there were games last year where Joe Barry's defense, let me unplug this phone over here. There were games last year where Joe Barry's defense didn't give up a ton of points. I still really didn't love the method. I still really didn't love the process, but the result was good. That's what matters at the end of the day. But we're trying to judge, whether a defensive coordinator is good, is bad, trying to judge, can I trust this defense to show up in a big moment? Can I trust this defense to hold their water on a big third down or when a quarterback is hot to get them off their spot and to take advantage of a mistake, right? We're just trying to evaluate a defense holistically. And I think at least through 2 weeks, if you just look at the counting stats, probably not doing it justice, probably not understanding it fully. Now, the counting stats were horrid last week. You can't really spin 400 plus yards and 30 plus points into, well, actually the defense played really well. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think it's possible. I don't think there's ever been a performance where a defense gave up 400 yards and 30 plus points. It's like, well, actually you got to look deeper. They played pretty well. They forced some turnovers. And if the Packers offense would have capitalized on those turnovers, then, they might have won in Philly, or not in Philly, but in Brazil anyways. Yesterday, the counting stats were terrific, 10 points. And it was a tiny nose of the football away from being only 3 points if Anthony Richardson doesn't make an awesome play and bust it outside and dive for the first down marker. So the results were much better. I know there are some folks that are a little bit concerned that Jonathan Taylor ran for 103 yards and had a really good day. Jonathan Taylor's really good. So is Saquon Barkley. And both of these offensive lines are pretty good too. If you look at rushing yards over expected, which is a stat you don't have to totally fully buy into and embrace as gospel, but if we're looking at completion percentage over expected or rushing yards over expected, those statistics kind of look at the play and it's like, here's how many yards we would expect a ball carrier to get here, and here's how much yard they actually got. And in both of the last 2 weeks, Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor were very additive, meaning they got more yards than were expected of them. It's like batted ball in play luck, kind of, or expected batting average. It's like, hey, when you hit a ball this hard at this angle, here's what's supposed to happen. And those statistics can, of course, be misleading, as I'm sure completion percentage over expected, rushing yards over expected. I think these first 2 weeks are probably examples of two teams with terrific offensive lines, rushing quarterbacks, right? I wonder how many yards Saquon runs for or how many yards Jonathan Taylor runs for if Kirk Cousins is quarterbacking these teams, right? If Jeff Hafley and this defense didn't have to account for a running quarterback, I wonder, if anything, what could be different. Maybe nothing would be different, but that's a factor that we have to consider. I also think Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley are really good. And there were plays where Packers were aligned correctly and in the hole. I can think of half a dozen plays where Quay Walker was right there and just biffed it. You know, I do think, and I want to get to the phones here, that pursuit angles, for the most part, tackling in space, especially in the flats, was much better. It was on normal turf, right? But there were a couple plays where Anthony Richardson, sprays the ball out to the flat on 3rd and 6, giving a wide receiver, a running back, or a tight end an opportunity to go then, pick up the necessary yardage, and the Packers were able to make plays in space to prevent that from happening. So I think the defense took a step. I'm not just going to say, well, they only gave up 10 points. They were perfect, and we don't need to look any deeper into it because that's just not how sports talk radio works. And I know that's not how sports fans work. But I will certainly take 10 points with some things to clean up over 30 points, 400 yards, and some things to clean up. So you might have more thoughts on the defense. I'm more concerned with style points on defense than I am on offense. If you're going to call in and say, well, the Packers should have scored this many points, I'd tell you, they just won a game with Malik Willis. We were staring 0-2 in the face. Take a deep breath and enjoy this win, because it is hard to win in this league. I know it's a cliche, but it is hard to win in this league. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, this is Jake. How's it going, Graham?
It's going great, Jake. How about you?
Doing pretty good. I'm on my way home from work, so that's a good thing.
Hell yeah. What do you think of the game?
Oh, man. I actually didn't get to watch it, which was a huge bummer, obviously. But, I mean, the outcome, like you said, it was Malik Willis starting. So you can't be angry. And as for the defense, I think it's what we expected. So from everything in the preseason, they're saying, oh, we get to play with our hair on fire and just, blazing trails, running around, play with their football intuition and go at it. And that's kind of what it looks like, to be honest, especially watching the defensive line, the edge rushers. It's been pointed out there's not much ability, I can't think of the word, or discipline in taking gaps. It seems like they are just playing with their hair on fire and going at it. But flip side of that, what they said when they were saying, well, with this defense, we're also going to have a lot of big plays against us, but we're going to make more turnovers, things like that. So I feel like we're seeing what we should have been expecting. And as the season goes on and they gel, it should clean up a little bit. I feel like we saw that a little bit on Sunday, but I don't know. Those are my 2 cents, I guess. I don't know.
Look, Jake, and I think those are a great 2 cents. I think it's a lot easier for me to say Jeff Hafley is new. He's installing his defense. They're probably going to get better. At least I hope they're going to get better. It's so much easier for me to say that when they allow 10 points. Well, they gave up some yards on the ground. Okay, so they weren't totally perfect, but it's a great step from week 1, right? And I also think, the Jonathan Taylor yardage, I think when the Packers went up 13-0 or 10-0 or whatever it was, I think Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff adjusted some things. And I'm not saying they gave up rushing yards on purpose, but I don't think they were overly worried about it. I think if the Saints were, I was going to say, if the Saints were going to go marching, which is maybe why my brain went there, if the Colts were going to march up and down the field methodically with Jonathan Taylor when they were down 16-3, I think because the Packers got off to that lead and could play from ahead, I think they were a little bit more okay with it. It's like, okay, well, if Jonathan Taylor is going to get 8 yards a carry and they're inching or moving their way methodically up and down the field, eating a lot of clock, we're okay with that, actually. Because I think at some point, if the Colts have to go 10-plus plays up and down the field, at some point, we'll get Jonathan Taylor stopped, and we like our chances at Anthony Richardson missing a ball or our pass rush making a play or something. I'm not saying the approach would have been night and day different had the game been 10-10 at halftime, but I think Matt LaFleur took his foot off the gas a little bit and got a lot more strategic, and he should have. He was coaching Malik Willis, and his team had a lead, and it felt really comfortable, right? It could have felt better if Josh Jacobs doesn't fumble on the 1 yard line, but he also had 151 yards rushing. It's hard for me hard for me to rip Josh Jacobs too much today. 608-321-1670. One more call, then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Tony from Texas. Hey,
Tony.
Coach LaFleur is being smart. He wasn't being conservative. And let me say, Grant, I've been looking for more Packer content. I turn on the Pack a Day podcast. Guess who's on? Grant Bills.
I'm certainly not the hardest working man in Wisconsin sports radio. I'm somewhere comfortably in the middle, though. I do a little extra stuff on weekends. Yeah, Andy brought me on. I think every other weekend I'm be doing that with him and Perry. It was fun. It was really fun.
Quickly turning into the king of all media of Wisconsin. Very nice. Well, hey, is there anything better than the NFL? Maybe God, your family, your fiance. Shout out LaCroix Butler. But this NFL, Grant, every game is just nip and tuck. The Ravens lose, the Lions lose, the Niners lose. You got Sam Darnold winning. You got Baker Mayfield Reclamation Project. I mean, it's just Bryce Young's getting benched. It's just wild, isn't it?
It's pretty fun. And I'm wondering, like, now we're learning that Cooper Kupp might go on IR. It's like, well, the Rams, I thought they were going to be awesome. They're 0-2. The Ravens, what's going on with them? Their offensive line is a mess. They lost at home to the Raiders yesterday, Tony. This is why the NFL is fun.
It is. And I got to give a shout out to the Packer organization. Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, one of the fastest winning coaches in the first 5 years in NFL history behind George Seifert of the 49ers. Takes in Malik Willis. Malik Willis, by the way, is no scrub. This guy was projected to be the number 2 pick in the draft before his senior year. So this guy's a good player, and Matt's just coaching him up. It just shows you culture, structure, continuity, leadership. This matters, Grant. Having the right players, the right coaches around you, this matters.
I think so. I think all that's fair. I think, look, Matt LaFleur talked about it in his postgame, Tony, is like, you guys think I'm being conservative. I didn't want to be reckless. Like, he was up, 13-3 or 16-3 at one point. Why would you start risking it? Why would you? It did not seem like, and I said this on the Pack a Day podcast with Andy and Perry, it didn't seem like the Colts were about to bust out of it, right, Tony? Like, it seemed like the Colts were struggling. It didn't seem like the Packers were getting away with anything. The Colts seemed like kind of a mess, and then Anthony Richardson couldn't put the ball where he wanted to. If that was Mahomes or Josh Allen, it's like, man, at any point, this team is going to explode and start scoring. Maybe you feel differently, but it was Anthony Richardson. Like, I was fine with the way that Matt LaFleur coached it in the second half.
Absolutely. Why risk it for the biscuit when you literally already have the biscuit? Couple of things to look at defensively. Carrington Valentine looks like he's beating out Eric Stokes right now for minutes on the corner side. And then Quay Walker, I'm like wishing for 2010 AJ Hawk right now. This is so sad to watch what Quay Walker, Blake Martinez, whoever, Nick Barnett, give me someone else besides Quay Walker. The guy cannot read and react. He's not fast enough. And then Devontae Wyatt is exceeding all of our expectations. This guy is going to get re-signed. Quay's going to get let go. Interesting things happen on the defensive side of the field. I'm excited about this team. They get by this next game, which I'll be at. They got a good chance to go some places. So this is going to be fun.
Tony in Tennessee. I appreciate the call, Tony. Very good. Very, very, very good. Good information. Quay Walker, I actually think his instincts are good. It's making the play. Your instincts bring you to the spot to make the play, and then you got to make the play. That's where it's fallen apart for him, and he dropped that interception yesterday. Devontae Wyatt making a play as a defensive end yesterday. How cool was that? Right? Devontae Wyatt seems like he's somebody who's going to benefit from the scheme change. I think a lot of Packers fans are, it's like, well, Hafley will make everybody better. And I think for some that'll be true. I think maybe there were some that fit better or fit good in Joe Barry's scheme. That might be a him thing. Quay Walker might just have to figure out how to take a step as a pro because he's still having issues, making certain plays. Got to take a break. I'm behind 3 minutes. We'll wrap up the Wisco Sports Show. Hour number 1 next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. We only got about 30 seconds here. Got a break? Get Zach's update and little breaking news. Tyler Van Dyke is out for the year. I know how excited everyone was with the trajectory of the Wisconsin football program, but sorry. We're going to have to relax for a little bit. If you're on hold, stay there. I'll get to you. 2 minutes. We'll keep talking Packers next. Hour 2, Wisco Sports Show.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, Matt LaFleur spoke with reporters earlier this afternoon, had no update on quarterback Jordan Love and whether he'd be able to play this week against Tennessee after missing yesterday's win over Indy. The Packers head coach didn't have any kind of an update because he made sure not to talk to his medical folks before coming to the press conference, but he did see Love.
I know he's doing everything he can, and, if he's ready, he'll be ready, and if he's not, then we'll proceed with Malik.
Love did not practice at all last week, though LaFleur said he would have been comfortable playing him. As for whether that would still be the case this week,
We'll see how it kind of plays out, but ideally, in a perfect world, if he's going to play, you'd like him to get some reps in, especially I think it'd be 2 weeks. I think that's a long time.
again, if Love can't go, Packers would roll with Malik Willis as their starting quarterback. He went 12 for 14 passing yesterday and a touchdown, did not turn the ball over. Willis played his first 2 seasons in Tennessee, so he'd be facing his old team if he did get the start. Turn to the Badgers. They are regrouping after getting blown out by Alabama. There has been no official word on the injury to quarterback Tyler Van Dyke, but it is serious, and he is going to miss the year. That, according to the Wisconsin State Journal, Badgers are on their bye this week.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Farmers deal with a lot, including long days, stress, and fatigue. This is your reminder to take breaks, stretch, have a snack, and hydrate your body. Avoid farm accidents by keeping yourself healthy. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn how Rural Mutual supports Wisconsin farmers and prioritize safety on the farm.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Brewers and Phillies are getting a pivotal series for playoff positioning underway tonight in Milwaukee. Right now, Philly comes in with the best record in the National League. The Dodgers are 2 games back, and Milwaukee is 4 games back with just 13 to play. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
Was just traded to Green Bay on August 26th for a 7th round pick. He starts the Packers home opener today. Let's make our picks. Rex, Colts, and Packers. Who you got?
Well, unfortunately, I've seen this Malik Willis play in the NFL, and no way in hell am I taking him. I'm going to take the Colts.
Okay.
One last prayer. Richardson will go as far as his arm can take him. It is tipped up there and intercepted. Intercepted by Evan Williams to finish this game.
The challenges of going into a football game without your quarterback, with a guy that's been here for 3 weeks, it's a credit to everybody. It's a credit to, again, to our players and our coaching staff for putting them in a good position.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Lots of funny sound bites that Packers fans and people on Packers Twitter are digging up about people who gave Malik Willis no chance to win this game. Now, I feel great about it, but man, I didn't realize people felt that strongly. Like Taylor Lewan on the Barstool Show saying Malik Willis does not know ball. Well, saying he's inaccurate and physically raw, not polished, sure. But if anything, yesterday was an example of how mentally strong and capable he is. How much of a knower of ball he is. He was there for 3 weeks, getting him in and out of plays, double, triple options, motions in the backfield. Yeah, they only had him throw 14 times. But there's a lot more that goes into the game of football as a quarterback than just simply dropping back and throwing accurate balls. Yeah, you need to be able to do that, but you need to get the calls in. You need to get the checks in. You need to get everyone lined up, and you need to do it in a language that's really unique and specialized to the team that you're on. And he's only been on that team for 3 weeks. He wasn't there for camp or preseason or OTAs or anything like that. So really important. I think Malik Willis leading the Packers to a win, and I'll say softly saving their season, because 0-2 and going to Tennessee, which will be a difficult game, and then moving on to Minnesota, kind of blew the doors off of San Francisco yesterday. 0-2 going into the next 2 weeks. And I know Will Levis isn't great, but going to play Tennessee on the road, that's a physical team. That's not a gimme, especially with a backup quarterback. A massive win yesterday, and I think it's one of the better stories, maybe the best story of week 2, but easier for me to say than others as a Packer fan and as a Packers owner. 608-321-1670. You've had a couple callers sitting on hold. I don't want to make you wait any longer, so let's get right to it. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Hello, line one.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Am I on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. This is Wayne in Windsor.
What's up,
I got just commenting on the Packer defense. I'm generally optimistic. They had the 5 picks in 2 games, so that was really good. But what was a little concerning was the 3-man rush at the end of the game, kind of like the old-fashioned prevent defense, to even let the quarterback get those spots that he could make a Hail Mary close to the goal line. Makes you a little nervous, and I was just wondering if that's going to be Hafley's thing. Did you see how the Texans handled Caleb Williams on his last drive? They came after him with at least 4 and sometimes 5 guys. They put him on his back, and they made him very uncomfortable, even getting off a throw, especially toward the end of the game. So anyway, I'm just I'm optimistic, but I'm still kind of wondering about some of the defensive concepts that Hafley brings.
Yeah, Wayne, you're acting like a football coach does. You're like, hey, I'm celebrating the win, but there's also things that we need to clean up. That's how football people think. So don't apologize for that. So you hit on a bunch of things. Bears-Texans last night is interesting because the Bears on offense have been really poor. Penalty-ridden. Depth of target is really low. Caleb Williams' completion percentage really low. Completion percentage over expected really low too. I think he's had more opportunities than you might guess watching him. Guys have been open, and he's just had a problem kind of syncing up and playing in an NFL game, and it's his second NFL game, so it's not surprising. I saw Bukowski tweeting about this last night, and far be it from me to side with Peter Bukowski on anything related to the internet, but if you believe that the Bears are a clown car and a train wreck, and on offense, we have real reason at this moment in time to think they are. I don't think it'll stay that way, but they haven't been good. They haven't been polished. Bears fans, is that unfair? Okay. Even playing that poorly on offense, they were right there with the Houston Texans in their building in primetime. So one of two things after last night I think has to be true. either the Texans maybe aren't as awesome as some thought, because the Texans, by the way, barely hung on to beat the Colts, who the Packers blasted with Malik Willis yesterday. And they hung on and really, I think, in unimpressive fashion in the second half, stayed alive against a Bears team that really hasn't even figured out their offense yet. So either the Bears are better than most are giving them credit for, or the Texans are not the start to finish dominant team that I think a lot of people are making them out to be. Because one of those two things has to be true of last night, right? The Bears can't be awful and the Texans can't be amazing and have the game, the final score, look like that. So I'm not saying the Bears deserve more credit in the world. I just want to evaluate teams accurately through 2 weeks. And that's all that we can do, because we only have 2 weeks. We have a show to do tonight. We have conversations to have tonight. So I'm not saying, well, we can't talk about that yet because we only have 2 games. No, we're going to go off the 2 games that we have. But either the Bears are better than most people are giving them credit for, or the Texans maybe aren't quite a juggernaut yet. Because based on what we know about the Colts and the Bears, I don't know that either one of those wins by the Texans. They're wins. It's hard to win in this league, but I don't know that either were super impressive from a style points perspective, which, style points don't give you extra wins. But when we're talking about teams in Super Bowl contention, we're going to look at style points. We're going to look at everything, not just wins and losses. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Happy Monday, Grant. It's Badger Bloody Reviews.
Happy Monday, Badger Bloody. What a fun time in Madison it was on Saturday. Thanks for stopping down to the Red Zone.
Oh, my gosh. What an incredible weekend. Awesome seeing you, Evo, Rowdy, Vagabond John, G-Dub. Really awesome community we have cultivated here. One of my favorite things is meeting my internet friends in person. Saturday morning did not disappoint. And, hey, what did I tell you, man? 2 for 2 on the predictions. Badgers get ball race. No one was giving the Packers any credit. They pulled out the win. But neither of those things are really what I'm calling about. I called in to talk to you about the best thing I saw this weekend.
Okay.
Which was former Badger Braylon Allen getting not 1, but 2 NFL touchdowns, making him the youngest player to score in the NFL. Actually, that ties him for the youngest player to score in the NFL, because the record was held previously by a man named Arnie Herber, former Badger running back, former Packer running back, who had previously held the record. Now, both of these players were 20 years old and 281 days. So Braylon Allen scored to the day on the same, to tie that record that was held of the exact same time. Another fun fact about that, Braylon Allen, the youngest current NFL player, caught a touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers, the current oldest NFL player. Love seeing former Badgers get success in the league. I just thought that sports moment was too cool not to call in and mention.
It was really cool, and I find myself in weird ways pulling for the Jets. Badger Bloody, I appreciate it. Nice to see you Saturday. I find myself in weird ways pulling for the Jets. I think the NFL is more interesting if the Jets are good and in contention on some level. I also think there's people are realizing what I think smart football fans have known for a while. It's like their offense is kind of Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. And if one of those guys turns an ankle, they're kind of boned. And they're not alone in that. They're right. This is a lesson. You can learn this lesson from the Bears. You can learn this lesson from the Jets. You can get really excited about your team and certain players in the offseason, but know that there's half a dozen at least other NFL teams around the league where the fans feel the exact same way about their guys. You know what I mean? So, I think Garrett Wilson's great. I think Breece Hall's great. But I think that Jets team is going to have a real hard time making the playoffs. The Titans, led by Will Levis, had more passing yards, had more rushing yards, matched him in time of possession. Will Levis is just an idiot. That's why the Jets won yesterday. And look, beautiful ball to Breece Hall, great catch. Braylon Allen performed really well, so I'm not taking anything away from those guys. And it was cool to see Braylon Allen get some action. And I own him in fantasy, so if it happens where Breece Hall ever has to miss some time, then I'm ready and waiting with Braylon Allen. But no, it was cool. And nice to see you on Saturday, Badger Bloody. Thank you for the call. 608-321-1670. Excuse me, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
It's Darnell.
Darnell, what's going on?
Hey, first off, it was great to see the Packers pull that out. That was just kind of icing on the cake of I think a weekend that everyone expected, right? But then we were kind of also like, well, the Packers, if they could make this a really bad weekend or kind of a wash. And I think that they did their job on Saturday or on Sunday and pulled out a victory that maybe not everyone was expecting. So that was great. I don't think anybody had the Badgers winning against Alabama. So I think that didn't make anyone too mad. It's kind of like, okay, we were going to get blown out. We were completely overmatched in that and lost our quarterback on the first drive. You're not going to win a whole lot of games like that. They weren't even competitive, though, which is what I think that most people are kind of peeved about. Have you gotten a call from Vagabond John yet today?
He's commenting on the live stream. I'm assuming between now and 6 o'clock, I'm going to get a lecture about how, the defense held the Colts to 10 points, but when Joe Barry was coordinator, I was told that points don't matter and we have to look deeper, and I'm looking deeper, and Jesus, look at all the yards that Jonathan Taylor got. I don't know. I hope I do. I love Vagabond John, but I'm assuming that's what we're in for tonight.
Oh, absolutely. Great guy, and he makes a lot of valid points, but when he does give you a call, make sure you tell him that when Joe Barry took over in 2021, they had 26 turnovers that year. Or they forced 26 turnovers. The next year, in 2022, they forced 24 turnovers. And then last year, in 2023, they only forced 18 turnovers. So they went from 8th in the league to 12th to 23rd in the league in forced turnovers. They are currently first in the NFL in turnovers through 2 weeks, and they've forced 6 already. So
they probably
do with that information what you will.
I hope he's listening. I hope he heard that, Darnell. And they could have had a couple more. They could have had more in Brazil. They could have had another one. Quay Walker could have had another one yesterday. So they are at the very least in position to capitalize on the mistakes of Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson. I don't know that although I would guess that Will Levis is going to give him a couple of shots this weekend, because that dude's been a train wreck in terms of ball security. But they have been forcing mistakes, and they've been in position to take advantage of them. They've missed out on a couple, but they've been in position. Yesterday, I'm just glad the counting stats were better. It's like, well, they gave up a lot of yards on the ground. Well, they were up by 13 points, and it felt pretty comfortable. This is a point that I made last hour. Give me 60 seconds to make it again, and then I'll get back to the phone calls if you're on hold. There is an alternate universe where yesterday's game flow or the scoring happened the same way, and I would have perceived it differently. If they were playing a quarterback like Sam Darnold, maybe them Sam Darnold. I was going to say Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, even Jared Goff. If they were playing a quarterback that was more of a known commodity on an offense that was a bit more of a known commodity, I would have maybe wanted Matt LaFleur to press the issue a little bit more. At the end of halftime, at the end of the fourth quarter, when they elected to punt, when they were kind of right there on the bubble of field goal range, maybe I would have felt a little bit differently. Packers fans, you might disagree, but at no point did it ever feel like that Colts offense was going to take off yesterday. There have been games where the Packers have had a lead against another good offense, and I've thought, man, they got to keep scoring. They got to go, because this isn't going to last forever. At some point, this other team's going to start moving the ball. At some point, this other team's going to get it going. It didn't feel that way with the Colts yesterday. And I think that factored into Matt LaFleur's decision-making, and I think it factored into the way that Jeff Hafley was calling a defense. It's like, look, if they're going to keep handing the ball off to Jonathan Taylor at 7 yards a pop, 7 yards a carry is significant. But that means if we don't give anything up more than 7 or 8 yards a carry, they're going to have to go on 10-plus play drives to score. And at some point over the course of that drive, we feel good about them passing for whatever reason and making a mistake. And yeah, that's kind of the Joe Barry thing. But against that team yesterday, at home, with that lead, with Malik Willis playing quarterback, I think it was the right strategy. If Matt LaFleur would have kicked it at the end instead of punting it, I think I would have been fine with it. If you tried to go score before halftime instead of basically just letting the clock run out, I would have been fine with it. But I don't have a problem with the decision-making and kind of the general spirit in which he operated, clock management things and aggressive versus conservative decisions. I thought it was fine yesterday. It made sense to me. 608-321-1670. Back to the calls. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Hello, hello?
Hello? Yep, it's you.
Okay, yeah. Hey, sorry.
No, you're good.
Packers did great. I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about the Badgers.
Hell yeah, let's go.
So, the biggest thing from Saturday, I was there. It was a great atmosphere, and that was probably one of the coolest ones I've been to in a while.
I thought it was great. I was there too, and despite what it looked like at the end, that crowd was jacked up, and the bowl was full, and the red white looked. Madison showed up big time at 11 o'clock on Saturday. You're right. I can second that.
The Bama fans were great. The Bama fans were awesome. But the biggest thing is that first drive, right? Typical Badger fashion. We're looking good. Boom. Late hit out of bounds. Van Dyke goes down. For any reason,
any Badger fan, you're like, man, Van Dyke's the guy. Well, after we lost him, you kind of saw that the Badgers the air got sucked out. Everybody's looking, everybody's panicking. Now you got Locke that comes in. So my biggest thing is there's two things that I want to say is those first two buffer games, the typical Badger fashion. So when you play those buffer games and you go up by 40 points going into the half, and then Locke gets to come in and get those reps. Well, now you see why that's so important. And everything like that comes in, and not begging for a buff punch up a guy's back. And then now we're struggling to get 27 points or 28 points against these third teams. So that's my big thing is obviously Van Dyke going down. You knew what the outcome was going to be after that. The second thing is now I want to get your sports analysis. You're way deeper in the Badgers than I am and stuff like that. But my biggest thing is I was really hoping for Luke Fickell kind of breakout for us during this thing. I wanted to see how creative he was going to be with the play calling. And a piece of me thought that, for those first two games, we were almost sandbagging. I don't want to say we were because we didn't look that good, but a part of me wanted to be like, maybe Fickell didn't, they circled this on the calendar. You got to think so.
Yeah.
So now with this, do we give a Fickell kind of an extra leg or an extra day to kind of, or you know what I mean? Like some more time because of this Van Dyke to get an extra year.
Yeah.
And then what is the opinion on your, the offensive coordinator? That's what I got. Thank you for the time.
Well, what's your name? Where are you calling from really quickly? Just for
Isaiah from Lacrosse.
Isaiah from Lacrosse. Okay. I mean, we might have talked before, Isaiah. I appreciate the call. So first of all, we have one more caller on hold. And if you sit there for 2 minutes, I'll get to you. And then we can wrap up the segment. That'll be perfect. We're going to get to everybody. That first take from Isaiah about, well, that's why you blow out Western Michigan. And that's why you blow out South Dakota. So Braden Locke gets some reps. And he doesn't come in ice cold against Alabama. I think that take is ridiculous, but I'm using it moving forward because that kicks ass. Because that gives me some ammo. That gives us some ammo to, hey, it's good to blow teams out. I know a win is a win, and you can't go more than 1-0 against Western Michigan. You can't go more than 2-0 against South Dakota. But I would just like to see Wisconsin bash a lesser school's skull in. Because the excitement for Bama, I know it was great on game day. It was great in the stadium. But the excitement on Sports Talk Radio and just among the Badger community last week going into Bama was pretty flat because they showed us nothing against Western Michigan and nothing against South Dakota. And if they jack one of those schools, just one of them, then Badgers fans would have got a little bit of a sense that, oh, they've taken a step since last year. They've figured some things out. They've added some things on offense. This is great. Maybe this Bama game won't be a slaughter. Maybe this Fickell regime is starting to come into focus a little bit. Maybe it's starting to crystallize a little bit. They didn't give us any of that. And that pisses me off. So, Isaiah, I'm going to use that ammo of, well, maybe if you would have blasted Western Michigan by 40, or maybe if you would have, beat the brakes off of South Dakota by 42 points, Braden Locke would have got some run. And maybe he would have been a little bit more prepared to come in and face Bama. I don't think it's true, but I love the take. I absolutely love the take. And that was great. And by the way, the second part, the sandbagging, they said that was true. Tyler Van Dyke's like, yeah, we've been keeping some things under wrap, which I guess makes sense for Bama, but also like, dude, you were on the ropes against Western Michigan. Why the hell are you keeping things in the clip? You guys were going to lose to a freaking MAC school. So, okay, you get points for being cute and saving plays for Bama. How'd that work? You got one touchdown and it's after Bama basically gave up. You got a pity touchdown. So I'm glad you saved those plays. Glad you held on to them. Really worked out well. 608-321-1670. Last call, then we'll take a break. Let's go Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. Steve here.
Steve. What's going on, Steve?
Hey, Packers stock up.
Yes.
Badgers stock down. To be concise, I think the Badgers, unfortunately, this season are in the bottom third of the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Next year is when our recruiting class will kind of show up. So we just got to hang in there till then. So what I wanted to really ask you about, I had a sports sandwich yesterday, the Packer game and the Bears game with the Brewers in between. And I watched that end of that Brewers game in disbelief.
Dude, don't even. I watched it too, Steve. It was the most poorly managed baseball game I've ever watched. I cannot think of a worse managed baseball game by both managers than the one that we watched yesterday.
I totally agree. My mouth was like agape. I'm thinking. So did Koenig? Anybody talk to? I heard Murphy's explanation. Did anybody talk to Koenig? I swear he came out of that game. He was dominant when he was in there the first inning. He must have thought he was done. And then they said, "Oh no, dude, you're back out there again."
Steve, I don't get it. Steve, I don't get it. His analysis of Devin Williams was not surprising, but it's just not wrong. Like if Devin Williams can't pitch today, he can't pitch today. Don't save him. Well, if he only needs to face one batter, can he pitch or not? If he can pitch, then use him as your closer. And if he can't pitch and he needs the day off, give him the day off and make that clear. Don't get him up and put him down and get him up and put him down and then get him up again. Like that serves nobody. That helps quite literally nobody. In fact, I think it's a detriment to Devin Williams because he doesn't get the day off. And everyone else in the bullpen and in the team's like, what the hell's going on? This doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. Williams looked pissed out there. And you could shatter Koenig's. They need Koenig. You could shatter his confidence. That was awful. You see him on the bench after the game. That's far worse than losing the game.
So you are correct in all this, Steven. I'm glad you brought it up. And I got to go to break. I appreciate the call. I know the Brewers are probably third fiddle right now, although they might be second because what did the Badgers even do to earn our conversation, especially now that Tyler Van Dyke's out for the year? By the way, breaking news if you haven't heard it. I know everyone was really jacked up about the game on Saturday and really excited about where this program is going, but Tyler Van Dyke is out for the year. So sorry to throw cold water on all of your college football Badgers expectations. The Brewers were probably third fiddle. That was one of the worst managed baseball games I've ever seen. Probably the worst one. Like Pat Murphy made a stinking poopy diaper load offensively and defensively of that game. And then imagine walking Bryce Turang to face anyone, let alone Jackson Churio. Respectfully to Bryce Turang, who I think in the big picture did take a quantum leap this year, but still. 608-321-1670. Take more of your thoughts on the Badgers, the Packers. If you have a Brewers thought, I think we just mostly covered it, but if you have something to add that we didn't hit, and Devin Williams absolutely was pissed because that's what Devin Williams does is he gets mad, and that's part of what makes him a good closer mentally. But oh yeah, he was pissed. You did not misread that situation, Steve. More of your thoughts on all this next. It's the Wisco Sports Show.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Twitter, at Wisco Grail. Watch the live stream. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Call and text the show, 608-321-1670. It's a Green and Gold Monday. It's a Victory Monday. It's a Tyler Van Dyke funeral Monday. It's a Happy Wedding LaCroix Butler Monday. It's a Pat Murphy, what the actual hell are you doing Monday? There's a lot of things going on today. I appreciate you listening. There's one caller on hold. I want to get to them and then maybe circle back and reiterate some things that I said at the beginning of the show for those who have joined us since. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Got Dean. How we doing?
Dean. Oh, lacrosse. Diener, how's it been? What's going on?
Oh, looking forward to next Friday. But until then, I'll just call. I'll be seeing you guys at Artie's, right?
Hell yeah. And I'll talk about that. I thank you because I need to mention that during the show. I know we have some promotions running in lacrosse, but I need to thank you for the reminder. I'll mention that after our call here. Give out the details again.
Cool, yeah. Okay. So when you said it was the worst managed game, I was thinking it was a collective effort. The top of the 10th, they had Sal Frelick put down a bunt that he popped. And so I think they said, well, that's about the easiest out you can get when you got the guy on second. And I was trying to listen on Western Wisconsin Sports Leader, but they had the Packers on, so I was listening on a different station. But so Frelick bunts out, and then they've got Terang, who has been admittedly hot, although his stats are way worse than the next guy. They intentionally walk Terang to get Churio, and I think it was the first pitch in the Churio at bat. He screams one the other way past the first baseman to bring in some guys. And I wanted to comment on Fangraphs. Now you don't have to scroll to the second page. Churio is now in the top 30 of the players on offense in the majors. He'll never get the NL Rookie of the Year over Skeens, but he's tearing it up. What are they doing on the Diamondbacks, walking Bryce Terang intentionally to get the Churio? I think there's some respect in his future that he's not getting right now. But both sides, I think, deserve some critiquing.
No, I mean, Pat Murphy, I get it. And Dean, I appreciate the call. I think sitting your closer up and down 3 different times on a day that was supposed to be a light day, I think it's great business. I don't know why people are up Pat Murphy's ass today. I don't get it. They still won the series. It's just, you have to work really hard to lose a getaway day on a Sunday where the Packers are playing when you've already won the first 2 games of the year. You have to work really hard to lose that game in a fashion that pisses people off and makes them feel dread about a team that's going to clinch a playoff spot this week. And yet that's where we are. And maybe that says more about Brewers fandom than it does about the Brewers, but I don't think so, because Brewers fans are the way that we are because of the team that we watch, not the other way around. And never forget that. Ever, 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 never forget that. By the way, shout out. I know we're congratulating the Packers on winning. We're congratulating Luke Fickell, Phil Longo, and company on, well, we're talking about the game, and we're talking about how poorly managed the Brewers and the Diamondbacks game was yesterday. But an accomplishment that I missed, and thank you, Brett, for pointing this out on Twitter. He's on Twitter. Great baseball follow, great everything follow, at Saladino World. Tweeted this statistic, and this is what the folks at Major League Baseball Network at MLB TV will not point out. This is something that Todd Rosiak and not even Kurt Hogue, who's edgy as edgy gets, they will not put hard-hitting statistics like this into their story, because this is the type of stat that big baseball and big Brewers like Rick Schlesinger doesn't want you to know. But I need to mention it. And again, this is follow Brett on Twitter. He only needed 84 more at-bats, but Sal Frelick has finally matched the 2021 Jackie Bradley Jr. total with 29 RBIs. Congratulations to Sal Frelick. I would have missed this if not for Brett pointing it out on Twitter. What an incredible season he's having. And Dean, you said, popping up a bunt, that's the easiest out you could record. Yes, it's tied for the easiest out you could record with Sal Frelick. It's tied with every other single outcome because he sucks no matter what he does. He's good on defense. Tip my cap. Okay. Like they don't have a plethora of good defensive outfielders. By the way, Dean mentioned next Friday, it'll be for our Madison listeners. We were at the Red Zone on Saturday. What a listener palooza that was. That was a blast and a half. To our lacrosse listeners, WKTY, Western Wisconsin sports leader, as Dean said. Next Friday is for us. It's for you. We will be at Flipside starting at 6 a.m. when doors open. Artie's Flipside restaurant just across from Menards on the north side of La Crosse. Very accessible. It's actually kind of nice. A lot of the listener parties for radio stations, for outlets, there's a lot of parties downtown, and that's cool. Flipside is not far from downtown, but it's a little off. There'll actually be parking. It'll actually be doable if you want to stop in before work, whereas if it were downtown, a little bit more difficult in and out as Oktoberfest traffic and the crowds kind of ramp up a little bit in front of the grounds opening up and the tapping of the Golden Keg. So come up to Flipside on your way to work. That's what Eric on I-90 did last year. Over the Line with Ebo will be there from 6 to 9. There'll be happy hour specials later on in the day as well during my show from 4 to 6. The Wisco Sports Show will be there as well, hanging out throughout the day. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll probably go join Bill's show a little bit at the Fest grounds, but I want to be out and about really all day. So if you are a WKTY listener and you're like, man, Badger Tailgate with listeners, that sounds fun. Well, we have the La Crosse version of that next week. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. we'll be there for Ebo's show. We'll be there throughout the day as well, I think. But then my show from 4 to 6 will also be there. And you're doing Oktoberfest stuff anyways, so work it into your day. Couple of texts here. Duck in Holman says, love Charles Bukowski, RIP. I think that must be a dig somehow at Pete. I don't understand it, but I appreciate it because making fun of Pete is fun. And he does it to himself, so I don't feel bad. Eau Claire Chris says, I've heard clearer words from the emergency broadcast alert than this caller. I think that was Badger Bloody, and I think he was yelling a little bit. Coyote Mike says, he's got 4 bullet points. 1, cheers to Brian Gutekunst for the Willis trade. Good point. Number 2, Matt LaFleur and his staff did a fabulous job. Number 3, first quarter, 4th and 1, and the Badgers line up in the shotgun. Then there is a review after the timeout. Then the line in the same silly formation. Yeah, I don't. Look, Coyote Mike, you're preaching the choir here. That was the thing that bothered me most this entire game. It's 4th and 1 against Bama after they tipped their hand because there was a delay for a review, which was dumb. And I believe that was a broadcast initiated review. Fox is like, hey, this is moving too quickly. Let's just check the spot to make sure. And I don't think they picked up the first down. I don't think Wisconsin got jobbed by the spot. I just wouldn't have reviewed it. Go for it on 4th down. Come on. It's hot. We're sitting here in the sun. Give us some action because college football is the worst at that. I always say we sped up the wrong sport. Baseball, college football, you know this. To line up in the shotgun in 4th and 1 and to run it is just so disrespectful to the Big Ten. You're like, Grant, take it easy. No. It's just gross. It's just gross. And the final bullet point from Coyote Mike. Brewers blew a chance at their best win of the year. Poor pitching, defense, and decisions at the end. Yes, all of that. Absolutely all of that. Text here. Badgers not losing by 60 should be celebrated. This team cannot compete with the Bamas of the world. I think Badger stock should be up, not down. Great game, kept it within 30 points. That's a win for Fickle and his staff. God, I hope that's a joke. Eric on I-90 says there's a big spider on the wall behind you. Thank you, Eric. By the way, about the Bama thing, listen up for a sec. I listen to all the sports radio shows in this state. I listen to them all. When I'm driving in the morning, I listen to Ebo, but when Ebo goes to commercial breaks, I spin the dial, as they say. I listen to our competition, right? I just like to hear what everyone's saying. I like to hear everyone's takes, get a fuller understanding of what's going on in Badgers fandom. The point of Saturday's game in year 2 under Luke Fickell and Phil Longo is not, well, they don't have the horses that Bama has. I know that. Everyone knows that. That's not the point. The point is this program has made no progress from year 1 to year 2. And I didn't even really need to see the Bama game for that. I could see that against Western Michigan and South Dakota. The point of Saturday wasn't, well, what did you expect? They don't have the resources or the athletes of Alabama. Yeah, that's the point. You nailed it right on the head with that take. That's what Saturday was about. You're right. Everything's going great. I'm sure Northwestern and Iowa and Indiana are in the bag this year. I'm sure. Don't worry, they'll lock those wins down. Those are gimmies. Forget about Bama. They'll just beat everyone on their Big Ten schedule because I feel great about that. Well, they don't have the talent that Bama does. That's not the point, and that's a crummy take. We should take a break, reset the show a little bit. Do a little bit of everything. This has been a fun show. Bouncing around, little Badgers, a lot of Packers. We should probably circle back, talk more Packers coming up next. It's the Wisco Sports Show. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
truth be told, Big Cat, you'll probably agree with this. I think that it's just the Packers. Just if somebody puts on a Packers uniform,
that's what I said.
Then they become good at quarterback.
It's bullshit.
There's some teams where you put on their uniform and you become a bad quarterback. We know several of them. And then there are some teams where it's just you fit in.
And it's they have a backup quarterback and they're like, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to draw up a perfect game plan.
Yeah.
This is how we can win the game and play to our strengths. And then they execute it. And then you walk away saying, how the did they just do that? And everyone tweets you being like, Malik Willis has more wins or touchdown passes than Caleb Williams and like that.
Yeah, that's mean.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
And for a while, it was also true that he had more 100-yard passing games.
Yeah, but not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
That was only true for a couple hours. Malik Willis did his in the noon slate, and then Caleb Williams did it last night on Sunday Night Football. I'm excited for Monday Night Football tonight. Not that I'll be able to watch it with my DirecTV subscription. I'm sure that'll be reflected in my bill at the end of the month. That bothers me just on principle. If it was about the money, then I wouldn't be a DirecTV person. I would just have an antenna and I'd stream illegally. But I'm gonna have to stream illegally tonight. And why? I have DirecTV. I shouldn't have to do it. But I'm excited for Atlanta and Philly. It should be fun because I didn't get to watch Kirk Cousins last week, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, he looks ancient." Like I'm kind of excited to see it with my own eyes. Plus, I think he'll probably figure it out and be a passable quarterback this year. But if not, then we can do the Penix stuff, and that's interesting too. That was, pardon my take, Big Cat and PFT commenter. Yeah, it just seems like whoever you plug in for the Bears, it kind of looks the same. It's like, so they're winning with defense and special teams. And I don't know. I think the Bears through 2 weeks, and I said this last week of the Bears. I think last night was just another good example. It's hard to win in this league. And fan bases like the Bears who got really excited. Well, we brought in Keenan Allen. We drafted this guy. There's half a dozen other NFL teams who also drafted a similar player and brought in a similar player. You know what I mean? It's just, it's easy to talk yourself into things in the offseason, but then the rubber hits the road and you're like, man, I forgot how hard it is to win in this league. And I think the Bears will still be good this year. I think they'll win a good amount of games. Starting slow with a rookie quarterback. Who'd have thought, right? But I just think it's a little bit of a wake-up call here in the first 2 weeks. Winning in the NFL is really hard. Just beating Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold week in and week out is not easy, let alone beating C.J. Stroud and the Texans in their building, right? Or fill in the blank, beating good quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. We all get that, but we forget, even beating the middle of the road guys, if you're not ready to go and if you're not polished and if you can't avoid committing penalties and doing dumb things, it's not going to happen. 608-321-1670. Continue to talk Packers and other things. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I. Did you just clear your throat?
I did.
Getting ready for your appearance. I love that. I'm
kind of like it. I'm able to watch you now on the live stream. I'm trying to get you to trying to shake you a little bit. I sent you a text there. Did you see it?
I did see that there's a spider on the wall behind me. Well, I was so confused. I'm like, Eric, you're not watching. You're on the highway somewhere. So I was confused, but now I get it.
I sent you another one. I'm at home now today. I sent you another one.
You're Eric at home. Do you say there's a booger in your mustache? That's good, Eric. There's not.
I'm trying to get you off kilter a little bit.
Hey, are you coming for Ebo's show next week at Flipside? You better make an appearance now.
Well, it's hard to be an international man of mystery if you start showing up at events.
Well, you could get in and out of there without anybody knowing that it's you, really.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not like everyone's going to shoot confetti cannons off when you walk in, Eric. You're going to look like everybody else.
I know. Like everybody else. That's so true. No, I had a really warm welcome down there last year. It was a lot of fun.
You're a folk hero.
Yeah, I'll probably come down. Yes.
Do some work from home or take Friday off. I know, Eric, I know you have all the vacation days in the world. I know you're just sitting on them, but you're a good, hardworking American. So you feel like you can't use them. You can, and you should take Friday off and just enjoy Oktoberfest.
I'm sitting on almost 4 weeks right now. So I should just take a day off.
You absolutely should. But that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life.
Right. The Packers, I didn't get to watch them yesterday, but you guys came up with a win, and that's pretty good.
I had to break my antenna out yesterday because my DirecTV subscription was trying to give me the Vikings that I also watched on a second screen. And Eric, you have to be beside yourself with your team right now.
Every game, I'm kind of like you were last year. Every game I go into, of course, I always talk myself into believing that we can win, but we have won. So it is. It's been fun, but I go in with zero expectations, which is kind of nice too. I don't have a lot of pressure on me because we're not supposed to even win 6 games.
Well, yeah, and you're missing guys like Addison's been out. Now Jefferson's out, but Hawkinson in theory is coming back. And like, you are not expected anything that the Vikings accomplish this year, Eric, will be a bonus. And that's a really fun way to have a season.
I felt there listening to your show, like we kind of made it because you were talking about playing really good quarterbacks, and the first word out of your mouth was Sam Darnold.
Yeah, wasn't that a slip?
It really was. I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow.
I mean,
and you can really tell too, a little bit too by the highlights. Like last week, we didn't get any highlights, and why would you? There wasn't any.
Mm-hmm.
But now this week, we got a lot of highlights.
Well, he throws
a lot of talk.
Such a pretty ball, Eric. When things are humming with Sam Darnold, you could tell that was a top 5 pick. And those guys retain those skills and those tangibles, those physical traits that lead them to get drafted so high and recruited so high. That player's in there.
Well, again, though, he's on a good team, just like Jordan Love was last year, and just like Malik Willis got to play for yesterday. They're on good teams. I think we have to always stress that, right? We get a little bit hung up in the quarterback against the quarterback. Well, it really isn't that, right?
Yep.
It really isn't that. So,
it's coach versus coach and roster, receiver, line, all that stuff. And the Vikings, I mean, Eric, how long have Vikings fans been dying to have a quality offensive line? You guys are set.
Things are looking up, but we're just going to take her one game at a time. And
Smart.
We're staring down the barrel of the Texans now. That could not go very well, but based on the game last night, I think we can hang with them.
You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. I get that. I do as a sports fan, but get excited, Eric. And I know we'll talk more, but try to make it out next week. I know people love seeing you. One more call, then we'll take our last break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Justin from Eau Claire.
Hey, Justin. What's up?
I just wanted to ask, what happened to Murphy's manager mindset? I know we've kind of harped on this long enough, but what happened to win games now and not really and worry about the next game when you get there?
Right. I guess I can't give you an answer. I think last night was frustrating because he was trying to manage for tonight and tomorrow at the same time. It's like, look, if Devin Williams can't pitch and you're worried about his innings, he can't pitch and you're worried about his innings. So just give him the night off and make that clear to everyone. Make that clear to Devin so there's no confusion. And your players will figure it out. And if you end up losing, you end up losing. But you can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out with your closer like that. Especially, I would say that Devin Williams has been known to be a tempestuous fella, let's say. Like, I doubt he appreciated how that went yesterday.
Yeah, well, my problem with it is even if he was cool with pitching, why, like, people were saying, oh, well, now if you need him for the Phillies series, he's available. Why? That shouldn't be the question, because if you're blowing the Phillies out, you're not going to need him. And if you're not winning, you're not going to need him.
Sure.
So why don't just use him and win the game?
Again, it goes back to what I've been saying about injuries, Justin. If a player is healthy and ready to play him. They're full bore. And if not, then don't play them because they need the day off or because they're not healthy yet. Like, I think teams and coaches, they get themselves into issues and they try to have it both ways. Well, they're healthy enough to be out there, but they're not healthy enough to do that. Just give them the night off, Murph. Just give them the night off. It's fine. You've already won the series anyways. You've already won the series. Just give them the night off. It's really frustrating, and it really killed the vibes that should be excellent today after winning 2 or 3 in Arizona, but they're not.
Yep. And then last thing about the Packers, man, that Josh Jacobs signing looked really good yesterday. And I am excited about the future. I was excited about the future already, but the fact that Malik Willis can win with this team against the Colts, I think they could really make some big noise. And I was already starting to think that.
That win yesterday just does so much. And I appreciate it, Justin. Thank you for listening. Thanks for the call. That win yesterday does so much. To avoid 0-2, to win a game with a backup, and to really feel like, hey, our offensive line did it. Tucker Kraft's throwing blocks. It all fell into place and made sense yesterday in a way that it didn't in week 1. And that was Brazil. It was weird. I think the further removed we get from that game, we're just going to discount a lot of the things that happened. And for right or for wrong, that's just sports works that way a lot of the time. If we have a weird game, we can treat things as a one-off and throw the tape out the window, etc. But yeah, yesterday it really started to feel like it made sense. And Josh Jacobs, obviously a big part of that. You're right, Justin. Let's take our final 3-minute break. We'll come back, wrap up the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. Last couple of minutes. For those of you who are wondering, hey, where's Vagabond John? I thought he'd call in today. About the Badgers to take a victory lap on how bad they are, or to take a victory lap about, maybe Joe Barry versus Jeff Hafley and Jeff Hafley's defense giving up, a bajillion yards to Jonathan Taylor on the ground, which I thought was a piece of the puzzle. It's like, well, we're up by how many points? So we're just going to kind of let it roll. And we think the clock will expire really before they can do any damage. And that happened. And I think they actually played it masterfully. If they would have been a little bit more aggressive, the way that things were going yesterday, I think it probably would have worked and they would have won and it would have been fine. I have no interest in style points when Malik Willis is playing quarterback. I have style point interests when Wisconsin's playing Western Michigan or when they're playing South Dakota. That's style points. That's college. That's different. I saw a lot of Packers fans. Maybe it's just the internet. Maybe the internet's just a bad place to go because people are more negative on the internet, I think. But I saw a lot of people on the internet yesterday after the game were like, well, they should have won by more. It should have never been that close. And yeah, probably should have been that close. Josh Jacobs doesn't fumble on the goal line and, Braden Narvison makes that last kick. But are we really going to sit here and debate style points? When Malik Willis was the starting quarterback, it's a miracle that they won one game. They have a chance to win now multiple games with Malik Willis. He fills in Jordan Love's stead. Like, are we really worried about style points, folks? Now, the defense, sure. We could talk about the defense and, well, they gave up how many yards on the ground and this, that, and the other. Sure. Okay. Like, yeah, we could nitpick style points with the defense because their horses are healthy. They're out there. We're judging that unit and we're trying to figure out what that unit looks like under Jeff Hafley. Sure. 100%. That's not only is that welcomed, I'd say it's encouraged because that's what we do on Sports Talk Radio. But I'm not going to question style points. I think Matt LaFleur wanted to shorten that game as much as possible. And once they got the lead, just get that thing to the finish line as soon as possible. And I'll continue to make this point. If that would have been Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or someone else on the other sideline, I think that game's handled differently. But there was not a sense, at least my point of view, of me thinking the Colts, well, they're gonna get it going any second now. They can't hold them off the whole game. They're gonna bust out. They're gonna get it going. They're gonna explode with some offense any moment now. I never felt that way about Anthony Richardson and the Colts yesterday. I never felt that way. And I think Matt LaFleur felt that as well. He's like, I feel pretty confident that Anthony Richardson and the Colts aren't gonna, blow our doors open for 17 points in the fourth quarter or something like that. So I think playing conservative, they were going to play this game conservative as it was. I think once they got a 2-score lead, we're going to go even more conservative because I don't feel good. I don't feel confident about Indianapolis's ability to score at all. How could you? Anthony Richardson couldn't put the ball on a spot, right? Like Jonathan Taylor was running nice in the fourth quarter, but then they stopped running him. Mostly because they didn't have enough time. Also, I think that was a little bit of and we can hash out, who got breaks where and when and how, like the Colts had some drops on third down. Sure. The Packers also left a touchdown on the board because Josh Jacobs fumbled going into the end zone and then missed a field goal late in the game. But the Colts also missed a field goal. Yeah, that's how football works. Both teams make plays, and oftentimes both teams make mistakes. I think it balances out in the wash, and I'm not going to sit here and complain about style points and how, Matt LaFleur and the Packers could have won by more. Malik Willis was playing quarterback. The style is winning. That's the style. It's the style that I'm interested in yesterday. It's a miracle. They started a backup quarterback, and they got back to 500 on the year after losing in week 1 and in a way that we thought their quarterback would be out for the whole season. Take it. Take it and smile. Get to enjoy this week. Enjoy the Brewer game tonight. Murph can't manage it any worse than you managed last night, so I guess there's your silver lining. We'll talk more about all of this tomorrow. Appreciate you listening.